I'm your host, U.S. Army retired Colonel, and veteran combat medic, Dr. Damon T. Arnold. And we have a special guest with us tonight, and it's Jose Vasquez. Jose is a U.S. Army veteran and executive director for Common Defense. And he's going to be telling us about Common Defense's mission, its programs, its services, and the agenda that it has set for itself. And we are honored to have you on, Jose. I've already been hearing some great things about what you're doing, but I want you to give us an overview of what the organization does and how it's affecting the lives of our veterans.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks for having me on, Dr. Arnold.
Mhm.
Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience tonight. As you said, I'm Jose Vasquez, Executive Director at Common Defense. We are a national organization of veterans. We started back in 2016. I would say, in large part, in response to the rise of Donald Trump. I live here in New York City, and those of us that founded the organization were also here in New York. So we got our start back in 2016, and have really grown really rapidly since that time. You may remember back in 2016 that when Trump was running for office, he hosted a fundraiser. He skipped one of the debates and hosted a fundraiser for veterans. And he held the fundraiser, but then when the Washington Post looked into which groups he was donating to, turns out he hadn't donated any of the resources to any veterans organization. So that was an opportunity for us to hold his, campaign's feet to the fire. We held a press conference out in Trump Tower here in New York City. There was about 15 veterans that were there, and probably twice as many cameras. So we knew we had touched a nerve with the national press, and we're able to put a lot of vets on, many of the talking head shows during that period of time. And we definitely got their attention because Trump started talking about us at his rallies and saying, we were supposedly sent by Hillary Clinton, which we were not. We had no connection to the Hillary Clinton campaign at that time. It was just a grassroots movement of veterans. And initially we were organizing just under a hashtag on social media, Vets versus Hate, really trying to push back against some of the hate speech that he was spewing on the campaign trail. And, have since grown to 40,000 members, veteran members across the country. We've got, over 300,000, probably close to 400,000 folks on our email list now. Many of whom are military family folks, veterans, and we're growing like wildfire. Started with 3 vets here in New York City, and now we have up to 30 staff, over 30 staff now. So it's really growing rapidly, and I think what we're trying to do here is build a political home for vets, who share our values, and we work on important issues like foreign policy. We want to protect our democracy, make sure that everybody has the right to vote and access to the ballot. And recently, we took on the issue of climate, getting veterans involved with the huge problem of climate change and how we can prepare our communities for climate mitigation projects. So that's the short version. A lot more to say about that, but yeah, Common Defense is a relatively young organization, and I would say that we're very eager to connect with our veteran sisters and brothers out there, whether you're in an organization or not.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And, I'm hoping my wife is listening because your English is so perfect. You're from in New York. I'm from New York originally, and I'm sitting in Chicago, and I've been trying to tell them, there, but, we have a better way of speaking, but it doesn't go over that well over here. but,
Right.
but really fantastic work you're doing. And that's an awesome accomplishment, 40,000 members and 400,000 on a mailing list. I mean, that is a sizable organization. And we know we're a nonpartisan radio station, but one thing I can't stand is anyone attacking a Gold Star family, a service member who was a prisoner of war, um, denigrating the very basis of why we served, and who we are as. And we have so many heroes, that lost their lives for this nation. and that's something I can never get past. And it's not a very nonpartisan way. That's just the way I feel about anyone who would denigrate our service members.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and I think that you know, that kind of speech against folks who served our nation in uniform and in many cases risked life and limb or didn't come home. I think anybody across the political spectrum, whether you're Republican, Independent, Democrat, what have you, I think up until recently, the norm was you respect people if they served in the military, and regardless of how they vote. I think that we have an amazing experiment that we've been running here for close to 250 years of having a constitutional republic and democratic values that allow people to have their voices heard, and elect who represents them in government. And so I think that, there are some folks who don't appreciate that or maybe don't fully understand what it means to, either leave your home and go and serve overseas, or even if you didn't go overseas, just putting on that uniform, I think deserves our respect, our honor. And, I think the way politics have been going recently and certain leaders, let's just put it that way. I think some people have forgotten that, certainly not the majority of us.
yes, yes, and and one of the things that that burns in my brain all the time is that I did a couple of tours in Iraq and then all over the region, but and particularly in Mosul, I was with the Second ID, Striker Brigade. They're out of Washington State, but they were housed in South Korea as their headquarters. But every 3 days, every third day, or fourth day, we were going to a memorial service, for someone who had succumbed to an IED or an RPG and had given their life for the country. And I just can't get to the point where I would support or agree with anyone that says that they were suckers and losers. It's just disheartening to me.
Yeah.
So it's just something I can't get past. But what about your service career? What have you been involved with? Or what was your experience?
So yeah, in terms of my service, I come from a military family. My dad's a Vietnam vet, or was a Vietnam vet. He passed away in 2020.
Yes.
Um,
Oh,
and But I signed up for. So I'm from New York originally, from Bronx, New York. Was
oh,
born
Bronx.
here. Lived in the Bronx until I was 9. Then we moved to California. So I grew up for half of my childhood in the Los Angeles area. Signed up, while I was still a junior in high school. Went off, as part of the delayed entry program. 2 weeks after high school graduation in 1992, I was in the Army, off to Fort Knox, Kentucky, for my.
Go Army. Hoorah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's right. Um, I
I had some Marines on earlier, so I just wanted to make sure we.
yeah, we got to represent. So I did basic and AIT at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and then my first duty station was Fort Benning, Georgia. My MOS was 19 Delta, so I was a Cav Scout for the first 4.5 years of my military career. Got lucky after being at Fort Benning for a year. Got stationed at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. So I was in the in the 24th Infantry and then the 25th Infantry Division. Duty in Hawaii is awesome. I was actually just back there recently for my 50th birthday, so
Nice.
was very appreciative of the opportunity to serve in Hawaii. And when you're off duty, you're in Hawaii, so it was pretty great. And then the rest of my time was as a reservist. I served 10 years as a reserve. I switched my MOS from Cav Scout to a medic, so I was a 91 Bravo back then. I think they they have changed the
Yes.
code for that more recently, but yeah, back then it was 91 series, and and then was in I was in the 100th Battalion, 442nd Infantry as a reservist. So I was a medic for infantrymen. And then when I got promoted, switched over to Tripler Army Medicals.
Well, yes.
Yeah, so I was there working in the emergency room during my drill weekends while I was using my GI Bill to go to college in Hawaii. I started college at Leeward Community College, which is right by Pearl Harbor. So I did a year of community college before I moved back to the East Coast, and then spent the rest of my time in various units here in New York City. I was with a combat support hospital out of Fort Totten in Queens.
Yeah.
We also did some drill in at what's it called? It'll come back to me, but it's a reserve unit in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn, yeah.
Yeah, so I was there for a period of time as well. So yeah, all in, I was in the military almost 15 years,
Yes.
and proud of every minute of it.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. And people don't realize that, and that's one thing I always say. People are in the military, and some people are there for a year or 3 years, and they say, "Oh, well, I was only in for a year." I said, "But you wore a uniform. You were a target, no matter where you were in the world.
Yeah,
That you were defending the nation, and people knew what you were there for, and what you took an oath to do." So I commend you for your service to the nation and to the people. And what you're doing now is just astounding. I mean, it's something that I think people need to listen to and understand what the common defense really means. That you are um, really deeply involved with the history making of the country, and making sure that democracy prevails, that people have a place to put their head down. And you were talking about the environmental issues, and I had a guest on earlier, so it was a national. What they're trying to build is a national independence bank. So it's the fourth attempt, and it's a historical progression from George Washington till now.
yeah,
And what they were talking about was supporting the infrastructure bills. So there were several things that came out from the current administration, like the PACT Act, but there was one thing that sort of slipped by the media. I think it was really not given justice, was the Inflation Reduction Act, and what its implications were for infrastructure rebuilding. And so veterans need to be involved in that process, with the build out of technology, AI, and construction, and hardening of structures. But we've been, many military members have been trained to really implement those systems and to do that. So they should be a central role in that, play a central role in that. So what's your vision of this whole thing about environmentalism and where we should be?
yes, sir. Yeah. So I think you're 100% right that most people don't fully understand what the Inflation Reduction Act meant. It was kind of the most monumental climate bill that's been passed in decades, and it's a huge investment in infrastructure, the kind of infrastructure we need to be more resilient in the face of impending, climate change and all of the things that we see kind of happening more frequently, right? Big superstorms, fires in places like California and Canada and you name it. Coastal communities that are having to sort of figure out plans for potentially relocating because the sea level rise is coming up. And so how we got involved in climate work in the first place was we conducted a survey of our members. This is going back a couple years now, but we wanted them to tell us, like, what are the most important issues that we should be working on as staff. And so working on the elections and protecting our democracy was top of the list. Bringing the troops home from Afghanistan when we still had forces there, And the third one, which to our surprise was climate. A lot of our members are deeply concerned and passionate about that issue. And I think veterans bring a very unique perspective to that because as we know, often with natural disasters, we call out the National Guard. Many National Guardsmen and women have filled sandbags in response to floods and
That's right.
food distribution, and we've got the logistics, the equipment, the know-how, the kind of ability to communicate, across long distances when the grids are down and all of that. And, many folks, I think, are familiar with microgrids. If you've been on a forward operating base, you know that the military is very self-sufficient and we have everything we need to sustain that forward operating base or any sort of, site where we're operating out of. And so, those are the kinds of things that I think, or those kind of experiences that vets can bring to the table in terms of educating elected officials about the kind of solutions that, veterans want to see. And as you mentioned, veterans are, perfect candidates for the kind of, green jobs and sort of like, whether it's solar panel installation and many other aspects of sort of preparing our communities for climate, disasters. Veterans, are perfect match, in terms of skill set, experience. Folks that have deployed on naval ships to respond to disasters in other countries. We've got medical skills, so you name it. I think that vets do the kind of things that they've done in the military, I think serve our nation well, even if they're out of uniform. And there's great groups out there like Team Rubicon, right, who have sort
Right. Yes.
of built up a reputation for deploying vets in the face of disaster, and I think that's part and parcel with what veterans can bring to the table when it comes to responding to climate change.
Yes, and that's really one of the common defense. Common defense is the name of the organization, but the common defense is, not only a foreign mission but a domestic one as well. We take an oath to, defend our nations against foreign and domestic enemies, and certainly those things that are impacting people's lives so deeply, like a hurricane or a forest fire or a flood, definitely are things that we need to defend against if they're going to have a really negative impact on our families and children and the elderly and people with disabilities as well. That I really have to applaud you for that. And when we're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, I was thinking about it came out in I think it was 18th of August 2022, and there was a meeting that happened in November after that, and it was happening in Egypt, but it was part of the Conference of Parties, 27, and it's like 20 different nations that come together and talk about things like climate change, like what we're going to be doing. But out of that, they actually made some bold statements, and I think rejoining the climate accord was critical, as was going back to NATO, and
Right.
trying to get nations to start coming to the table to start thinking about these things, because we're seeing more forest fires, we're seeing more intense hurricanes. I mean, it's undeniable right now that something is happening with our climate and that we're having these deep impacts. And what's really important is that we have the Army Corps of Engineers, for example, thinking about hardening structures and making sure that we protect these, because if we just simply rebuild the infrastructure we had before, it's going to be decimated again and again and again. We're going to have enormous costs, to the nation, to taxpayers, and that kind of thing. So, getting military expertise in early and making sure that we're thinking about rebuilding structures in an appropriate way to face the issue of climate change is essential. I mean, for the economic stability of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, and the kind of I sort of talked in broad strokes about the work and the role that veterans can play. To get more specific about what we're involved in specifically, we have a project in Pima County, Arizona. I'm sure it's not a surprise to anybody that Arizona gets lots of sun, and so we're working with community partners to try to get a big kind of solar farm installed and accessing the Inflation Reduction Act dollars. And so part of what our climate team at Common Defense is doing is like educating municipal governments and sort of creating a organized voice of veterans who want to see these kinds of projects come to their communities. Another project that we worked on was in West Virginia. We partnered with a local church that serves a historically Black community in West Virginia, in Charleston, West Virginia. So working with that community to get solar panels installed on the church so that the church can become sort of a hub in the event of things like flooding and other kinds of disasters, right? So that, at least everybody knows, the church can still provide power, people can charge their phones, they can do food distribution. And so that's the kind of, projects that the team is working on. We also have work happening in Pennsylvania, just south of Pittsburgh, working with folks down there to, again, try to get solar projects going and actually get veterans to fill those jobs.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we have about 3 minutes to go. I could spend all night with you, Jose, because what you're saying is just like music to my soul. My background, by the way, is I'm a physician, but I'm an internist, so internal medicine, but I also picked up a second residency in occupational environmental medicine and occupational health and safety, but got a master's of public health, a master's of arts in threat response management, and security studies from the NPS and Naval Postgraduate School. Even though it's Army, they accepted me.
Yeah.
And then the University of Chicago. But I've really been very strongly supportive of doing things in the environmental realm. We have got to get there and start really doing really powerful things in that arena. So I'm going to be reaching out to you because I think you're on a great track. You're doing the right things and have
Appreciate that.
a great
Yeah.
focus. But yeah, tell me, where do people go to find out about your organization? And we have like a couple of minutes to go, but where do they go and how do they get involved with your Common Defense?
Yeah. I mean, the website's pretty simple. It's just commondefense.us. If you are a veteran, you can go to commondefense.us/join, and that'll take you to the join form. We're all over social media. Our handle on almost everything is @commondefense, and so folks can follow us there.
Yeah, can you repeat those again?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So the website is commondefense.us. If you're a vet, you can go to commondefense.us/join to fill out the membership form, or just navigate your way there from the homepage. And then our social media handle is @commondefense. And we welcome anybody who, is currently serving, has served in the military. We got lots of military family members in the organization, or just, concerned citizens who like the work that we're involved in. And, it's worth saying that one of the things we do and we take a lot of pride in is, identifying vets who are interested in becoming leaders in their communities. So one of the programs that we run is called the Veterans Organizing Institute. It's a training program, nonpartisan, and we've trained, at this point, hundreds of veterans across the country in our style of community organizing. So we've got, we teach vets how to tell their stories, how to talk to the media, how to go to a town hall and speak up. How to do a one-on-one conversation with another vet that you're trying to recruit into whatever cause you're involved in. And it's just been a real blessing, really, to see so many vets come through our doors, get that training, and oftentimes just immediately apply that work. Somebody will come through the training and then say, hey, I spoke at my first school board meeting, or I went to my city council meeting and I identified myself as a vet and told them what I think about whatever is being considered in front of that decision making body. And so that's one program we do. We also just recently partnered with an organization called Task Force Butler. So what they do is, I mean, the shorthand is they call themselves Nazi hunters. So people that are involved in sort of extremist movements, they are holding those people's feet to the fire, trying to make it, not only expose them, but make it costly for them to be involved in that kind of work. And so, we are excited to partner with folks at Task Force Butler. They've got a website as well as taskforcebutler.org. And, we have been collaborating with them on some work recently. So excited to be launching that here on Veterans Day. And, the last thing I'll say is, there's many vets orgs to join. I think what makes us unique is we very much take seriously the kind of tradition of organizing similar to the civil rights movement or labor struggles in the United States. We are very much about like meeting people virtually, but really we're trying to get to know each other in person. So we've got staff in 5 different states: Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Texas.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Jose. We're going to have you back because this is an incredible organization you are leading, and I have loved the work. So you're going to see me, on the line, getting involved and joining your organization too, because I think it's something that we need to be proactive and be part of. Again, America's Heroes Group. We currently have metrics of 8 major cities, and in cities that we're in is 1,152, 72 countries, and YouTube channel is 1,115. And then also podcast downloads. We're over 5.8 million downloads thus far. But we try to cover topics that are important to you and bring people on like Jose Vasquez, who does an incredible job. And we want to make sure that we are engaged as veterans